Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 56th part of What If Deku Was a Magical Girl Mascot. Quirk, Magical Girl Mascot. The author of this great fanfic is Emma Ively. Links to them and original story in the description. Chapter 56, Super Mode Tests. That day's training was much better for Izuku in coming up with ideas for combinations. Of course Tora's quirk wasn't something he worked on due to the fact that her quirk wasn't something he would normally use, and his wings were not something he could use easily. He still needed to get some more flying practice. Some combinations he had gotten down easily, like a combination of Shoto's ice half, Katsuki's explosions and Achiko's quirk to make an easily creatable meteor shower, was something he didn't need practice on. Partially because it was something he invented a while ago. Though Izuku realized he could try a new variation of the super jump, realizing that if he had Tenya's quirk to it, he would get a great speed boost. It actually worked well. And he quickly thought of a way to soften the landing, which was to switch quickly to Katsuki's quirk. "Great job, young Midoriya," called out Toshinori, who was helping out that day. Izuku nodded and went back to practicing the jump. Toshinori went to the various students and started to give advice to them. When he got to Kaminari, there was this little exchange. "Thanks, Gal Might," said Kaminari. "You're quite welcome." "Wait, what did you call me?" asked Toshinori. "Sorry, that's a nickname that's been catching on," said Kaminari. "I see," said Toshinori with a sweat drop. She had heard the term Lady All Might being thrown around, but Gal Might was new. Toshinori began to go to another student when there was rock that got knocked away thanks to Katsuki's training. Thankfully Toshinori was able to punch it away into dust. The class all saw this. "So manly!" yelled Kirishima, impressed. As Toshinori was transformed at the moment and she was rather sheepish because of it. "I didn't mean to punch it to dust," she admitted. "Did you forget that being transformed powers up your quirk?" asked Katsuki. All Might's sweat dropped in embarrassment. She kept forgetting that fact about her quirk. "Seriously?" asked Katsuki, looking at Toshinori's face. "Have you been careful in your hero work?" asked Tsuyu, who also heard this. "I have, don't worry," said Toshinori. "All of you need to get back to your training," sighed Aizawa. The students nodded. Aizawa looked Toshinori. "By the way," said Aizawa. Maybe I finally open a book about teaching," admitted Toshinori. "Of course you did," sighed Aizawa. Sometime later the training was over. Though it wasn't entirely over. "Come on Deku, and whoever wants to test this out," called out Katsuki. "I'm in," cheered Toru. After all, she was a magical girl fan. All Might nodded, knowing about this training, as it was tied with her quirk. "Seriously, you're training with Gal Might?" asked Kaminari. "It involves his quirk," said Izuku with a sweat drop. "Oh yeah. I forgot you had it now," said Kaminari. Everyone stared at Kaminari. "That's a big part of his quirk," muttered Jiro. "I don't know why I forgot about it," said Kaminari. "Deku's partners only," said Katsuki, "so whoever wants to join me in clear, choose now." Izuku laughed. The other magical girls decided to join, knowing it was going to be an important training. They headed to one of the city training grounds as it was one of the ones available for the day. "So this is about my quirk," sighed Toshinori. "We're seeing how the whole power-up thing works," said Katsuki. "Mom and Melissa already know we're doing this training," said Izuku, "so they'll know if they randomly transform why it would happen." "Of course," said All Might. Izuku turned on All for One and decided to power up his partners. However, when he did so, he noticed something right away. During this, only All Might and Katsuki were transformed. And that was the only lights he could feel. Well, he could feel all of them, but the only one he could reach out and activate. "What's wrong?" asked All Might. You are the only ones I can sense, said Izuku. Oh, I think I get it, said Toru. She grabbed her gem and transformed. And Izuku sensed her light. I can feel yours, said Izuku. So you can power up only those who are transformed, said Tenya. That's a good failsafe, said Tsuyu. So you don't have to worry Inko or Melissa during fights, said Ochako. Or whoever isn't with you, said Tsuyu. As long as they're not transformed, said Izuku. Well, let's see if you can do just one of us, or if it's an all or nothing thing, said Katsuki. The plan was for him to just try to power up Katsuki during this training. He focused on Katsuki's light and no one else's and powered her up. Of course Katsuki went into super mode and thankfully only Katsuki. Oh fuck yeah, said Katsuki looking at her grenade gauntlets. So it seems rather simple, said All Might. Can you add someone else? He looked at Toru and All Might. He noticed that Toru was practically begging for it. Okay, Toru, said Izuku with a sweat drop. And with that he channeled the power into Toru. All right, said Katsuki. No fighting, scolded Tenya. This testing young Izuku's capabilities, we should do that another time, said All Might. Katsuki glared at them. What are we going to do next? Asked Izuku. Well, about that, said Toshinori. She took out pepper from somewhere. Izuku's sweat dropped. Really? Asked Izuku. It's the best way to test you get forcibly transformed back to your animal form, said Toshinori. Izuku sighed. He was nowhere near his time limit, even had been experimenting with his sleep schedule. He had been due to the fact that he had 9 partners now. While if he had 8 hours of sleep, it meant that the next day he would have 18 hours of time in his human form. And that wasn't accounting for meals. So he could lose some sleep time at night. But last night was a night he didn't experiment with his sleep seclude, so, yeah, he had a full 18 hours to work with that day. Wait, was last night an experiment night? Asked Katsuki. No, it was a full night, said Izuku. Then you need the pepper, said Katsuki. Wait, experiment night? Asked Toshinori. I told you not to experiment, scolded Tenya. I have 2 hours at most than I did at the camp, said Izuku. I know you're worried, but I do need to push my limits when it comes to my quirk. He right, you know, sighed All Might. Tenya sighed. So they did the other partners. After all, the kidnapping did affect all of them. Plus there's Tensei, said Izuku. I will end up gaining 2 hours from him too. Tenya sighed, almost forgetting the plan to bond with her brother soon. Look, I just have to know my limits, it will be fine, said Izuku. I know, and I am sorry, sighed Tenya. Toshinori poured some pepper into Izuku's hand and the boy sniffed it. And of course he sneezed, forcibly turning him into his animal form. And when that happened, both their super modes was undone. However, Toru undid her transformation herself, while Katsuki looked mostly fine. Hey, you okay? Asked Izuku. Unfortunately, it feels like I just ran for a run, said Toru. I'm a little tired, but I'm fine, said Katsuki, who hadn't even transformed back. Well, that does make sense, said Tenya. You probably have different levels of stamina, said Shoto. Shoto is right, as your quirks are vastly different. I'm sure that your levels are much different, agreed Toshinori. Deku, said Katsuki. Try it again. Why? Asked Izuku. If this drawing's our stamina, we need to see how it works, said Katsuki. Isn't this supposed to be for emergencies though? Asked Izuku. Yeah. But we still need to know, said Katsuki. It sounds like you want to test out your gauntlets, said Tsuyu. Katsuki glared at Tsuyu. Hit nail on the head, said Achiko with a sweat drop. Yeah, said Izuku with a sweat drop. I want to test it out too, said Shoto. Are you sure? Asked Izuku. It's fine, said Shoto. Shoto transformed, followed by Izuku turning back into his human form and channeling the quirk again and into the two of them. So we should just use our abilities for a bit? Asked Shoto. Izuku nodded. While you do that, I should talk to Izuku about something, said All Might. The two nodded. It was clear whatever could be talked about could be spoken in front of the four partners who weren't testing this out. That was when they heard massive explosions followed by maniacal laughter. Let's ignore that, said Achiko with a sweat drop. And they decided they should ignore it. Something I should have told you when we bonded was that if you weren't fit enough, your body could have exploded, said Toshinori. What? Yelled Izuku. There was a loud crash and the flush of flames. Well, I might exaggerating, but your limbs probably would have popped off, said Toshinori. You should have warned that when you two bonded, scolded Tenya. Shit. 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 They heard Katsuki cry out. Considering we were in the middle of a battlefield, I don't think that was an option, said Tsuyu. Su's got a point, agreed Toru. Look, it doesn't matter how many explosions I unleash, just help me. They had Katsuki yell. I mean, it's fine though. I mean, it's clear that you did build some muscle growing up, said Toshinori. Me and Kaken always had to build our arms to handle her quirk, explained Izuku. It can hurt my arms if I overuse her quirk, and she gets hurt too if she overuses it without using her magical girl powers. Ah yes. I should have realized it, said Toshinori with a sweat drop. Also, I have been working out my legs, admitted Izuku. Quit taking your time, do something, yelled Katsuki. Why? Asked Toshinori. Tenya gave her hero a look. Oh right, said Toshinori. So that's why I'm able to handle one for all, said Izuku. Toshinori nodded. That was when they noticed that a small amount of flooding had started. It wasn't like a giant wave, but it did go over their shoes. Maybe we shouldn't have Igor-ned them, sighed Achiko. They went over to where Katsuki and Shoto were training. There were several desatried buildings, of course. I think that's enough, said All Might. Izuku nodded and turned off the quirk. Immediately both their super mode transformation turned off before their usual magical girl's transformation, and both of them collapsed. Are you okay? Asked Izuku. Fuck no, muttered Katsuki. I can barely move, sighed Shoto. It's clear that you should only use super mode in dire circumstances. If only a few minutes can do that, said Toshinori. Fine, muttered Katsuki. He does have a point, said Tsuyu. How are we going to get them back to the dorms? Asked Achiko, realizing that the other two are unable to move. Well, we have to carry them, said Toshinori. Dibs on All Might, yelled Katsuki, earning a sweat drop from everyone else. I think I'm fine with that, said Shoto. Tenya ended up carrying Shoto. They got back to the dorms. What happened to you two? Asked Jiro. Super mode's drawback sucks ass, yelled Katsuki. Ah, said Jiro, nodding. Yeah, even just standing around for a couple minutes is exhausting, sighed Toru. I don't know where your room is, admitted Toshinori. You know I can tell you, right? Sighed Katsuki. Toshinori's sweat dropped. As Toshinori carried Katsuki upstairs, several of the other students noticed something. "Hey, why is All Might still transformed?" asked Shiro. Izuku just shrugged. He didn't know why. She really didn't need to be transformed at the moment. And so with that they learned more about super mode. After all, it was something they needed to learn about, and it was clear it was an all or nothing situation that would only be used in the most serious of situation. And hopefully it wouldn't be something they would have to use for a while. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 57. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.